Welcome to this new video in which I think I found a very important clue about the connection between the Soulsborne series and especially a clue about the identity of souls, of Dark Souls. In, uh, in Dark Souls, we find for the first and maybe only time a question directly done by the writer Miyazaki to the player, which is about the identity, the nature of humanities. Personally, today I think I found finally a solution, which I found through the study and research of all the works ever written by H.P. Lovecraft and another work inspired to the work of H.P. Lovecraft, that is Berserk. In this video, we will see how the three games, the three franchise of Demon Soul, Dark Souls, and Bloodborne are actually three representation are a medium for the representation of the three manifestation of Nyarlathotep. Nyarlathotep is a creature that has been created by H.P. Lovecraft. It has several shape representation, but in particular it has been defined in several tales as the soul, the heart, and the messenger of Azathoth, which is the god of the creator of all the universe. So the first one will be Demon Souls, in which he is represented as the soul of Azathoth. In Dark Souls, the heart, and in Bloodborne, the messenger. Let's start with the souls of the old one. We can connect the old one with the work of Lord Dunsany, with Mana Yod Shusai, if I pronounce it right, and Azathoth. These three creatures have many characteristics in common. We can say very fastly that all of them create the whole universe, all of them are sleeping for a long time, and all of them are gonna destroy the universe when they wake up. In the first two cases on the left, we find that there are servants that keep this monster asleep in order to avoid that they can wake up and destroy all the creation of life. In the case of the old one, he is kept in slumber, but not necessarily by music. So maybe through magic, maybe through the swords that are put through his body. But in general, when he will wake up, the same destiny to the reality will happen. This kind of story that repeat and repeat in the several authors, I wanted to connect it with the idea of the astrophysical idea of the creation of the Big Bang, which expand the universe continuously till when it ended his energy, and the gravity of all the universe, stars, and black holes and masses in general will shrink on himself to create again the primordial black hole that created the universe. This can be somehow a fantasy representation of a metaphor of this kind of process. The old one and the Azathoth then have both a soul. In the case of Azathoth is Nyarlathotep, which is his soul, heart, and messenger. In the case of the old one, we find his souls that give the name to the first game, Demon Souls. Moreover, we will go to define even the other aspect that will make the soul of the old one become more similar as the soul of Azathoth. So we find in the game of Demon Souls, in the prologue, this sentence: on the first day, man was granted a soul, and with it clarity. A deep study of this of the prologue of Demon Souls and the talk with the Monumental you can find in the channel in another video dedicated. Should be the fifth video of the first season of about Dark Souls. But in this video, we will go quite fast. So here is represented the creation of life. So the old one is a kind of big bang of the life. In the second part of the prologue, we find the second paragraph. We find that the old one is a soul-devouring demon who take the souls of the humans. And in this case, we have the behavior of the black hole. These two figures are not connected together from the beginning, but during the story, through some object and some talk, we can find out that the god that give the souls and who retrieve them is the same creature. So this is already a secret. We can consider them it already a secret. We find several clues during the game. There are many. Many can be provided. In particular, here I have some talk with the Sage Freak. I hope it's the right pronunciation. In which that are some of the proofs that explain how a human can become a demon. And demons are not demons by themselves, but they have something else that define them, not the species to which they are part of, but is another characteristic that I recognize, I think quite obviously, in the quantity of souls absorbed. Indeed, we find that even our hero, or several bosses that we find during the game, before were humans, but then they become demons, with the only difference of having more souls and then more power, and theoretically more clarity. So maybe even a more clear view of the world and the reality. So at the end of the game, we find the old one that behave like a black hole of souls that attract to him through the demons all the possible souls. At the end, we find our hero in the bad ending that usually is for who follow a Soulsborne timeline. Is the bad ending is the one that connected to the Dark Souls. We find our hero that absorbed the souls of the old one, and we can imagine him becoming a celestial creature. In this case, here I use the image of the Bacchus spider Rom. We can imagine that even Alan did the same attempt to do the same thing, but probably he was not enough powerful, and he was transformed in this disorganized mass of matter and flesh. In this case, I would like to make a reference to Persona 2, in which Nyarlathotep is presented in a very similar way. And for me, this is interesting aspect, considering this theory, indeed absorbing the souls of the old one, which are, by definition, through the parallelism with H.P. Lovecraft work, Nyarlathotep itself, the manifestation of the physical manifestation of Nyarlathotep is the one who succeed in absorbing the souls of the old one. But this is not particularly important. Now we already define the history of the souls of the old one, and we arrive to Dark Souls, defining how Nyarlathotep manifests himself as the heart of the old one. So, in Dark Souls, we have a prologue that is quite similar to the bad ending of Demon Souls. Here, the old one, or the human absorbing the soul of the old one, have absorbed the soul of all the living being in the world, and his demons are in a state of let's say of between life and another state of life, in which they are dormant, let's say, and and we find some kind of paleogenesis in which we find some kind of phoenix rebirth of the old one. So he burns, he goes in combustion under the ground, and he is found from what we can consider the body without souls the boletarian bodies without a soul. Indeed, after the old one take the souls of the humans, these humans are not necessarily dead, but somehow they can be like the mummy of the Egyptian culture, which are body ready to be possessed again by a soul. So these bodies find the souls and they continue. They get up from the ground where they have left for centuries and they start to live again. We find the three lords plus one, which find the dark souls, the dark soul. In this case, I want to consider the dark soul as the born body of the celestial creature that have the demon souls. In this case, then we can consider it some kind of black hole of souls, which has the shape of a human creature, or even the shape of the very similar to the um, Vacus spider. So we can find some characteristic of the humanity that may make us agree on the nature of black hole. So the humanity or darkness allow the distortion of space of time and time, which allow us to go to invade other players, so to go in other worlds, or that are particularly connected to any kind of time travel in the trilogy of Dark Souls. Um, it is possible to use them to see through time. Indeed, we have this figure of the fire keeper with closed eyes or without eyes in some cases, which is a way to stop them, as description of the Ringed City, to see the truth. Indeed, from the horizon, event horizon of a black hole, according to some theories, it is possible to see the future to see the future flowing fastly in front of your eyes. So we know that the fire keeper are creature with infinite quantity of humanities inside their body, and it would be dangerous for them if them could see the future through this power. The power to manipulate matter, that is still the power of the firekeeper, that use the souls bring by the undead in all the Soulsborne games, to materialize them in abilities that can be more strength or more intelligence or other characteristic that can be materialized by the control, maybe gravitational control of the souls. And the black hole is, even by definition, can be considered a hole in the fabric of reality, and as the mist of the old one is considered something that destroy the fabric of reality. So even the old one can be considered as this hole in the fabric of reality, as a whole. So we go back to the definition of humanity by the game. This black sprite is called humanity, but little is known about its true nature. If the soul is the source of all life, then what distinguishes the humanity we hold within ourselves? Usually between the people that search answer in Dark Souls is the normal practice to consider reality, what is the facts that are inside the description of the objects. And in this case, we can or expect that the souls are not the origin of all life, then here Miyazaki is lying. Or we can think that the humanity is just a different state of the same thing that is souls. We know that souls are even made by light, not only white gas, but enlightened white gas. And even here I find a confirmation of the black hole theory, because similarly to the light, even the light can create a black hole, and the same matter of the light can become dark, for the simple fact that a black hole doesn't allow the light to escape from his event horizon. Another possibility is that there is another kind of life that is not like the life of the normal humans, and is part of a higher state of the beings. So we find that the soul, the dark souls, is the soul of the old one, is at the same time a concentration of normal souls, of what the humans know as normal souls, and is the burned body of the hero of Demon Souls. We can find some kind of proofs to these three, at least manifestation of these three possible identities in the will of the dark souls to reach life and to absorb it. Um, we can consider it a concentration of souls, as you can use it and then life, because you can use it to recover HP during the game or to restore your body in a human body. And finally, the human nature of the um, or celestial nature of its shape, related to the hero of Demon Souls, can be found in the shape of this kind of soul that, differently from the normal soul, seems to have a body and a head. Both of these characteristics can be connected to a human or to the celestial creature, like the Vacus spider, which has more or less the same shape. So here we have some description of some sorceries that allow us to find the main characteristic of souls and darkness, which are very similar things. So we find that there is a will within the dark souls. They are driven by a will. They seem to feel envy or perhaps love towards some kind of target. But in another description, we find that this target is the life. Finally, we even find that the dark souls, the humanities, have more weight than normal souls, and they inflict physical damage. We even find a very interesting sentence in which it seems that humanity are more close to matter than souls. So even here we find some kind of evidence of some kind of concentration of these ethereal souls in something more material. Here I've done a kind of densification of the information we found in the previous slide. So we can say that the humanities are fleeting will, feeling envy or perhaps love toward life, are weighty and inflict physical damage. They are closer to matter than souls. We find in the DLC of Dark Souls 1 how the humanities, which are enemies, can inflict damage to the player just going through his body. So this is another interesting possibility to connect them to black holes of life, that when entering contact with a human being or any living creature will take his HP basically. A last connection that I want to do between the black holes and the humanities is the existence of double humanities. It is indeed known as binary black holes are quite common in the universe. Some of them are often found in the center of the galaxies, and then it's interesting that it has been designed even a kind of humanity, of double humanity. Let's go back to the lore. So we find a human creature that found the dark souls. He get a transformation. For me, even this one can be a representation of a kind of Nyarlathotep. And as we see in the DLC, in the far past, he created the humanities. These humanities becomes later humans, and on the chest of this human born some kind of tree-like structure. Being the dark souls then located in the position of the heart, this can be considered as still as a black hole that open a portal to the old one. Indeed, many people have make speculation about the humans being the seeds for trees, which taken on its own would have less sense than just considering like the humans as representation of the old one that is growing again through each of the dark souls. Considering again the position of the dark souls, we can say that the dark souls is the heart of each human, and that the humans are somehow the child of the old one. Then we can consider the dark souls the heart of the old one. At this point, we have two characteristics related to to Nyarlathotep, which can be associated with him from the Dark Souls, which is the soul and the heart of the Old One. In Dark Souls 2, we find Ardia say something like the humans are just in a fleeting form from when they have been imprisoned by the dark sign, and that their being part of the cycle of life is just a wrong assumption. It's like the man is not part of the life, and he is just as he say, props on the stage of life, which doesn't belong to there. We can this kind of imprisonment of the human allow the gods to use them as a body that stores souls that then can be used to give energy again to the fire that make the world of the gods prosperate and go on. From this use that is done of the undead, we can even assume a characteristic that is particular of the undeads, and is the ability to manipulate the souls and somehow absorb them inside their body, which would be another characteristic similar to the old one. The metamorphosis and the messengers of the old one. Here we are getting close to the final part of this video. In Dark Souls 2 we find the souls somehow evaporating and becoming that kind of wooden effigies. We can see in the next slide, we will see how the Dark Souls tend to produce wood, or in general some kind of trees, that is still in the parallel metaphor of the black hole, can be associated with the emission of radiation by the black hole that in a long time is will totally disappear. In the same way, the Dark Souls is able to emit this wooden manifestation of the old one till when the core of the Dark Souls get finish its energies and disappear in the nothingness. So in the Dark Souls 3, finally we find the fire fading. Indeed, there is nothing to burn anymore. It's like a dying star who is finishing the material for burning. And as we know, when a star finishes the material to burn, it will collapse in himself, and if it is enough big, it will become a black hole. With the fire fading, we find even the dark sign fading, and so the humans and the dark creatures, that are the humans, are finally free to become what they are destined to be, and what, according to Aldia, they should have been if they didn't have the dark sign. Here I've put some images in which we can see the several stages of transformations of the humans. And I notice in particular how in the Soulsborne series, the people that are particularly related to the dark souls, and to celestial creatures, are seated on wheelchairs. Somehow it seems that the dark powers, probably with their being heavy and more static than the light represented by the souls, are make the people that use them more static. This can be found even in Dark Souls 3, in which the humans have become basically trees, because the transformation of the Dark Souls um, is not stopped anymore, and they are reaching their normal state of life. But we can find a difference from the different transformation of each creature. Indeed, we have different um, kind of transformation according probably to how much power is left in the dark souls of this creature once they are able to transform. Indeed, the more weak creature will become trees, while the more powerful will be still able to move till when they will totally finish their Dark Souls, let's say, reservoir, till becoming different kind of creatures that we will see soon. Here, connecting again um, to the sentence of Aldia, we find that the dragons that we can consider the final form of the transformation of someone that have a dark soul, or almost the final form, are not really alive, but are something between the alive creature and a creature in another state of the of life, which cannot properly be called life. Even Miyazaki says how dragons are not alive, but are in a status, like in status situation in which they just are, being half life, half living creatures. This can quite well match with the definition of everlasting souls of demon souls, and even with the definitions that we find along the trilogy of Dark Soul. Indeed, if we consider the Dark Souls as the generator of the transformation, metamorphosis of the humans in other creatures, of which the greatest and the final form is the dragon, we could find an explanation to why the Dark Souls is considered to be not a soul, but at the same time be able to generate life, or something that seems like life. Indeed, because the dragon are not properly alive, but are in another state that is not cannot be defined as life. Here we find the several stages, but there are many more. Here I just collect some to give an idea of a kind of stair of evolution of humans possessing a dark soul. So we start from a dark soul, then a human that in this case has been trapped with the dark signs in this fleeting form, to use the words of Aldia. And then in the end of the time, we find finally humans able to complete their transformation, probably according to their the power of their souls together with their dark souls, because we can remember that humans not only have dark souls on the position of their heart, but in general they even have souls. So we find these transformations that I found in this YouTube channel that you can find the link below in this slide. Personally, I even agree on the humans being creatures destined to become dragons, but I have to admit that I didn't have the ability to notice that actually in Dark Souls 3 we can find a real transformation of all the creatures, of the most of the creatures we encounter, as a different stage of the transformation in dragons. Especially the Pose of Man that this guy on YouTube explained how it is basically the transformation of humans with powerful souls in dragons. So we find that this transformation, the wyvern or wyvern, I don't know the pronunciation, the serpents that basically are humans that wanted to become dragons, but they hoped for something too bigger than them, and didn't succeed. And at the end, we find the stone dragon that is a human that has successfully reached this form. Now, I want to do parallel between the Dark Souls and the Bejelit of Berserk. Indeed, with Dark Souls 3, more than with other games of the series, and then with Bloodborne, of course, we find we start getting closer to the aesthetic of Berserk, and thanks to these similarities and some reference, we can find even some lore information that can be associated between the two works. So we can, I did this proportion in which I say that the Dark Souls stand to the Locus, as the Bejelit stands to the demons of Berserk. Indeed, the Bejelit is a pendant that can be worn by some humans that are destined to become demons, so creature of another level. The demons you see here in the image on the right are still not completely transformed, but these humans later, in a specific situation, will transform in demons of different shape and forms. So this is very similar analogy we can do, as both these kind of demons later will, let's say that both these kind of demons, the Locus and the demons of Berserk, are creatures that have somehow transformed thanks to an object, and that are looking forward to a big sacrifice and a big feast that we will discuss soon. By the way, I want to speak about the what many before than me have considered possibly to be the creation and the connection between Dark Souls and Bloodborne. Indeed, I'm speaking about the painting of Ariamis, or I hope I'm not confusing with Ariandel. I think it's Ariamis, and it's the transformation of the souls from a gas to the blood. Indeed, we find that during the time, the Dark Souls has been dried and totally assimilated by the body of the pygmies that we find in the DLC of Dark Souls. Then we can even assume that even the souls in some part have become part of the blood of the humans. And in particular, here there is a specific focus on the Dark Souls that is particularly more rare to find, and that is needed to Ariamis to paint her painting that many, I think, successfully have recognized in the painting that hosts the story of Bloodborne. Finally, we arrive to the greatest analogy with Berserk, which is the eclipse. In a Berserk, the eclipse is not the end of the story, but is just, let's say, a plot twist of the story. While in Dark Souls, the camera go off in this point. With these slides, I want to suggest how the ending of Berserk, no, of Dark Souls, could be highly inspired not only on the aesthetic but even on the lore side to Berserk. Indeed, here we find the Lord, that is the Dark Lord, that is our player, that has finally reached the moment in which he will transform in a creature of a higher level. The analogies here are many. The Dark Lord is reached by his servants in both the stories, and in both the stories his servants are waiting for some kind of feast, and so we can see it in the conversation with the white-faced locust in the DLC, and of course we can see it in the ceremony for the creation of the new god in Berserk, in which the locusts eat the humans, and the blood that has been sunk from the humans is used for as tribute to the creation of the new lord. Here again, I reported the analogy. Sorry if there are some Italian written things, but I took it from the Italian scan, this picture. And here again, I make the connection between the Begelit and the Dark Soul. Both of them are tools that allow you to become a demon, and the demons that become that have these tools await for a feast in a not specified future. Here we see some of the pages of Berserk, in which we see Greaves transforming in a creature of a higher state of existence, and his transformation can happen only thanks to the sacrifice of all his friends that have followed him till that moment. So he sacrificed his followers, and he transformed in a new creature, which is this kind of bird-like creature. Even here, I find a similar characteristic between Greaves and the moon presence, especially in the position of their body during the transformation. The idea of the egg as a symbol of life, and as we will see soon, the idea of sacrificing other lives for the creation of this creature. This is what is written in that pages in Italian that I showed before. Till now you have been living in a dream, called Griffiths, but now you will wake up in an endless dream. This is the voice of the god, and this can be connected with the dream of the hunter in the Bloodborne, in which the moon presence lives in her own dream, in which she is a god. We have another interesting quote from the doll of Bloodborne. "Oh, Flora of the moon of the dream." So, the repetition of the dream status of that reality. "Oh, little ones, oh, fleeting will of the ancient." And here we find a strong connection with the little ones of Dark Souls 2 with the Minfanito that said, "When we sing, the little ones dance." I already explained this in another video, but we know that the old one has Azathoth and has Amana, as all the influences that have created this character are how to say, are come down from the music. This can allow us to guess that the little ones that like the song of the girls in Dark Souls 2 are the will of the old one, which are the Dark Souls. And now we find that the same term, little one, used for the Dark Souls, is even used for the little one of Demon Souls, which are the messengers. And even them are called fleeting will of the ancient. This, to me, is a very strong clue that closes the circle of the different identities of the souls of Dark Souls, no, of Soulsborne. But we will discuss this even later. So the servant becomes the messengers of the moon presence. Of course, it's very difficult to imagine how this creation happened, but we can see a zoom of the image of the creation of the moon presence, in which we see on the left Greaves with the blood of his friends that create his ascension to a higher state. Here we find what may be the followers we see in the end of, in the, let's say, bad ending of Dark Souls 3, staying all around the moon presence and somehow probably helping his creation. We even find a hole in the chest of the moon presence. It's not totally clear the reason why there is this hole. It may be that this creature are the result of the Dark Lord absorbing the souls of his followers, and then this soul comes out from his chest in form of messengers. But the kind of metamorphosis is not very important. We can just assume that these messenger are part of the metamorphosis in the in the god, which is the moon presence. Here we can find finally that we have achieved all the three steps, all the three representation of of Nyarlathotep. We find that Nyarlathotep is the soul, is the heart, and is the messenger of the old one. These three representation can actually be found in each of the three games, but the explicit representation is presented in order from Demon Soul as a soul, in Dark Soul as the heart, and in Bloodborne has the physical representation of a messenger. Now, to prove further the connection between the moon presence and creature like to make, let's say, to make other analogies between the moon presence and other creatures that are the direct representation of the will of the old one and then Nyarlathotep, we can see the similar way in which the moon presence go through realities and catch our hero, exactly the same way in which Manus go through the realities, specifically till the future, to take our hero, and even the marvelous I don't remember the name, but that character that came directly from the world of Bloodborne. In the same way, even the moon presence, that is a creature originated by Dark Souls 3, sorry, is able to catch a creature that comes from the painting of Ariamis. And in doing so, he take um, German and the doll that he created of Mary. I don't remember how it is called, but the name was Mary. So we can assume that the word of the dream of the moon presence is this tree that has been created, a little like the finger coming from the nothingness, from the bottom in Berserk. And this environment has been prepared in order to make it pleasant for German, representing his house and his doll, and has been used as a place of contact between the world of Bloodborne and the world of Dark Souls. The reason why this kind of connection has been done is because of the willing of Nyarlathotep, that is represented in the moon presence, to reach his Dark Souls. Indeed, the Dark Souls of Dark Souls 3 have been used to paint the painting of Bloodborne, and this means that to finally achieve the will of the Old One, the moon presence need to reach the world of Bloodborne that is made of Dark Souls and obtain the Dark Souls through the system that he used. Indeed, creating his worshippers, hunters, and sending them in that world to recover all the blood echoes possible to complete his transformation. Indeed, we can see that the moon presence in the game is not a completed being, but he lacks a part of his chest. So the transformation is not complete thanks to the transportation of the black dark blood to the of the black blood of the dark blood in the Bloodborne world. In order to create these hunters, it is needed to have, even in this situation, a creature like the Firekeeper that is able to empower the hunter during his travel. To do this, he chooses to give life to a doll. In Berserk, we find how there is a scene in which Greaves have from the eye of Greaves comes his last tear. This tear has a particular attention during the transformation, and I have reason to believe this is the tear stone which make the doll alive. Indeed, this tear stone is very similar to the soul of Firekeeper, especially the soul of a Firekeeper of Dark Souls 1, and then the fact that this is a tear made me do the connection with the final tear of Greaves during the transformation that may transform in this tear stone, which is even a soul of a Firekeeper. This tear stone is supposed to have given life to the doll, but later I've came to another solution. Indeed, we find a tear falling from the face of the it's not sure that these tears actually fall. I remember like this, but I may just imagine it, but this is not particularly important. It may be the tear from the girl in black when she has been, let's say, killed, slayed by our hero, that has been recovered and or better, has been kept inside the Dark Souls and then has been given to the doll. Even this theory had some problems. Indeed, it's difficult to imagine how these tears that then has solidified, thing that can happen even to souls in the time, as we see in Dark Souls 2. It's difficult to imagine how this tear may get solidified, and then be given to the doll during all this passage of transformation from Manus to Dark Soul to humans till the Dark Lord. Indeed, came to my help the idea of the transplant of eyes from the first Firekeeper, that according to this theory is obviously the woman in black, to the last Firekeeper, which has tears that have been given from, which has eyes that have been given by the Unkindle, and thanks to these eyes, she is finally able to see the future. Indeed, she can see a tiny flame in the future, the flame coming back in the future. This can be can be connected with what we said before about the Firekeeper and whoever has a Dark Souls to be particularly able to see the future. But anyway, this transplant of eyes to the other Firekeeper should mean the possibility of having a part of the same destiny of the first Firekeeper. It would even mean a transformation of the tear of the last Firekeeper as tears of the first Firekeeper. This tear can then be taken by the Dark Lord. We see in this scene he takes the flame, but we cannot exclude he's taking even the tear, or maybe he is going to take it later. But we have this contact between the Firekeeper and the Dark Lord, which then transform in this tearstone that contained inside the soul of the dying Firekeeper. This is the connection that bring the tearstone to the doll, and make doll have the same power of a Firekeeper. This aspect is worthy of attention, considering the description of the tearstone, in which it is said that a doll cannot share tears, then the tears cannot be hair, and this seems quite good connection that we can do between Dark Souls and Bloodborne. Now, you will forgive me if this is not true, but I remember how even this tearstone in the end of the description is considered as something of not great importance. And this is very interesting because, as you can go to find in other videos of my previous series, we find that this kind of sentence is often used for things that are actually important. We find even in a ring of Dark Souls 2, that is one of the main connection between Dark Souls 2 and Bloodborne, the affirmation that actually that object is not that important. So it's somehow an ironical way to highlight the importance of an object, especially supporting the theory of the connection between the Soulsborne. Even considering the use of this kind of ironic way to make a description that is even found in some works of H.P. Lovecraft, in which when describing something that may be important has a plot twist of the story, he will describe it as something of little importance. Has the tale give importance to several elements of the story according to which part of the story you are in that moment, and so use the same element that before were not important as plot twist for something that happened later. Here we find another quite obvious connection between Berserk and Bloodborne. This connection was made by many, but in this case, in my theory, take more interesting, powerful value, considering that the analogy doesn't stop only on the hunter with the person sacrificed for the transformation, but the hunter is actually part of the transformation of the moon presence for completing the moon presence in her transformation. And both the symbol represent a creature which blood is totally owned by its god, and which is destined to be consumed by the god for this kind of transformation. This even for who would not like to connect Bloodborne with Dark Souls, should admit that the moon presence is not a complete being, and then this symbol get much meaning, considering that is the symbol that both in the manga and both in the video game are symbols that mark people that are destined to fulfill this transformation. And that's why I think that according to what I've said till now, it's very likely this to be a big story that starts from the end of Dark Souls 3 and ends with the end of Bloodborne. So we see I would like to finish this part of the video, giving a comprehensive view of what we have discussed. So we find that, okay, in this case I will just read. The demons with their demon souls represent the will of the Old One and retrieve the souls for him. So the will of the Old One is to put all the souls together in one creature or in one location. Then we see the Dark Soul in the position of the heart. And we have a reference to the Dark Souls by the Milfanita. When we sing, the little ones dance, the little ones grant comfort to those who bear death and dark. So in this case, even for the singing that make happy the little ones, we can make the connection between this and the will of the Old One. And finally, we find the sentence of Flora. O Flora of the moon, of the dream, O little ones, O fleeting will of the ancient. Let the hunter be safe, let him find comfort. We can consider these creatures as what is left, or yeah, okay, this is something that I'm doing live because I didn't think it well before, but they may be the heart of the moon presence that coming out of that hole on its chest become its messengers. So they are basically the end step of the solidification of the soul. We have a soul that is totally gas. We see more solid material representation of these souls that is a heart. And finally, at the end of the times, inside of the latest world created by Miyazaki, we find a solidification of these souls in a living physical being that is the messenger. Then these three creatures not only represent the three nature of Nyarlathotep, but very soon we will see as each of them are even all three the manifestation, but they just represent physically one of these. I would like even to do a little speculation about Ariandel, that Ariamis, sorry, which need even normal blood to make her painting, because from her conversation with the Unkindle, we can find that Ariandel uh, consider a painting to be done of, or must be done of the dark and the light, or anyway, a disparity that is perfectly balanced. So this means that as she put the dark souls, at the same time she has to put equal quantity, or at least with the same value, of normal souls, which is not dark souls. So we can imagine that she put her blood in the painting in order to, uh, which contain the soul, in order to balance, make this balance. This means that the creature that provide the blood, one of the creatures that create or provide blood to the humans in Dark Souls, may be a representation of Ariamis. And in this case, I think it could be Cthulhu, that in Bloodborne is represented as Ebratus. The only proof, apart what I said till now, sorry, of this to be true, can be simply the seated position of this creature that is kept both in Dark Souls 3, the drawing by H.P. Lovecraft of Cthulhu, and the representation of Cthulhu that is bright as in Bloodborne. So let's make a fast recap. There is an old one. The old one creates life. The old one take away life. A human become part of his soul, and together with the human, the old one and the human take all the souls in the world. After the old one is full of souls, he reach his objective, and he will explode in this kind of paleogenesis, like a phoenix that reborn from his cinders, and his will is part of the souls found by the ancients, the gods of their souls. This soul has been is destined to take all the souls of the world and turn off the fire. But this soul has been imprisoned in a circle of fire, and has been used to uh, enlighten the world several and several times to keep the rule of the gods, to keep to preserve the rules of the gods and what they have created, the society they have created. In Dark Souls 3, we find a weak and a weak uh, a weak dark sign that loses power and becomes and allows the humans to become the creature that they are supposed to be, because the human state is just the first state along a long road that each one can achieve. That is the one to become a celestial creature. The one that can become a new old one, of course, is the one that can take the power of all the other souls and complete the transformation to go further than the normal dragon and become what is over the dragon, which is the celestial creature, which represent the will, so the soul, the heart, and is even a messenger of the old one. This creature is called the moon presence, but has many names. It's even called Flora, or the pale blood, or Odeon, or the shipless Odeon, I think. And as Nyarlathotep, we can see it has many names, and we recognize him as Nyarlathotep, being the soul of the most ancient creature. At this point, there are several kind of ending. There is the ending in which the two endings in which the moon presence succeed and continue taking dark souls from the blood of the creatures of Bloodborne, and so she will become a new old one, and probably she will give life to the humans again in a new big bang, in a new demon soul. Or there is the situation in which um, the hunter succeed in defeating the moon presence and become himself a substitute creature, celestial creature, that will be able one day to give life to a new world as the old one did. So it's a child old one that will start the cycle again from the beginning. As I said before, here we find the three nature in each of the games of the souls of the old one. In Demon Souls, we find that the soul has normal soul, similar to the human souls. The heart um, is this wooden structure that contains the souls. So these souls can be considered as the representation of the heart in some way. Let's say the structure, call that at least. And then we have the black hole behavior, that is the will of the old one. In Dark Souls, we find some souls that can work both as soul and as a physical body, which is the heart of the undead. And then we find again the black hole behavior of tiring, of absorbing souls. Finally, in Bloodborne, we find the souls in form of blood, both dark blood and the normal blood of the other characters in the game, as we could see in the Abyss Watchers. The moon presence, here we go a little in speculation, but we see his head in the concept art disappearing in a mist that seems to bring his head in another dimension. I like to believe that this is a portal through other worlds, and that the tree growing around the dark souls, so even on the heart of the humans and the body of the humans, or the heart of the old one, or even the shrine of Amana um, connection in the center of the shrine. These are all things, all parts of the connection with the head of the. They are all manifestation of the growth of the head of the moon presence, while the hunters, in several generations, feed her with blood, and in this way, the moon presence would even be in all the times that collapse in themselves that we find at the end of Dark Souls 3, and is where the dream of the hunter have place. Thanks to this particular location in which all the time collapse on himself, the moon presence is able to reservoir, to let's say, to bring the nourishment to the dark souls and the demon souls in the other worlds. Okay, after this crazy speculation, there is the messenger, which somehow I believe to be a representation of the moon presence, and that at the same time comes out from his chest, being his heart, and help the hunter to make the will of the moon presence. But this has been already assured by the conversation with the doll, the monologue of the doll. So we have reached the conclusion that are that we can find, that I want to express through this video, which are: Soulsborne are joined in a unical timeline. The Demon Souls are the subject of three titles: Demon Souls, Dark Souls, and Bloodborne. Indeed, we can easily imagine Demon Souls and Dark Souls as two different names for the same thing. Giving several names for the same things often happen in the mythology of H.P. Lovecraft, as with Nyarlathotep, which is the god with more names possible. And the Bloodborne refers to the Dark Souls, which is Bloodborne. the dark souls of Ariamis that she used for the painting is the blood-borne substance that she used. And finally, the soul represents the bricks of reality. This third one may not be clearly explained from this explanation. So we are going to do a little other chapter to explain these my beliefs. We said that the blood has been absorbed by the bodies and by the blood in particular during Dark Souls and Bloodborne. This blood in these games is even can even have fire, be inflammable, which make an interesting connection with the souls, which are flammable as well. We see in all Dark Souls that the souls can get fire. According to this connection of the souls and the souls that can be present in blood and the ability of blood and souls to burn, I find interesting connection with the oxygen, which can be represented in the gas as the soul, or can be represented as contained in the blood, indeed the bloodborne, and in the game can take fire, has primordial fire, has souls, or has pyromancies, or in Bloodborne as blood that is used as a weapon. I would like to make even a connection with the Doctor Who, which has a creature called the Ancient One, which is a thermoforming structure in a spaceship, which create around of itself a forest. This forest then can create oxygen and make the planet make possible to live in the planet through this production of oxygen. I found this very similar to the creation of oxygen that may be done by the old one through the souls, still considering the souls as oxygen, and considering that the old one is basically a big garden full of a big garden that can produce a lot of oxygen. Even from other my videos, I take this concept of the density, which is quite interesting. A denser soul, or a denser flame, we now can accept the flame to be a representation of the soul. The extus are liquid flames, and denser extus can give more life, as humanity can give much more life. So we could see this progressing of the HP recovery according to the density of the kind of soul that we assume. Another interesting fact is the description of the Aweston, which says that maybe the souls once were one only thing altogether. And this would match together with the idea not of the simply of a primordial fire, because this is known by every player, but here there is an allusion to something before this primordial fire that contain all the souls, and this thing could be indeed the old one of Demon Soul. Finally, we find the stone created by the blood of Bloodborne. From Dark Souls, I always believed that the Titanite was solidified souls, and with these descriptions, I found an analogy that helped this theory. These stones somehow solidified, crystallize, and become rocks. So even here we find even though in this case it's not going to give us any kind of life. This source seems to contain some kind of information or DNA that help to create this crystallization, and this even help us to sustain the theories according to which the souls from Demon Soul till Bloodborne have become more and more solid till become messengers. Finally, here we have without finally, here we have the souls. We have souls that have been catalog according to um, we have a taxonomy of souls according to their different properties as gas, liquid, or solid, or the capability to give HP to the player. So, and it is even natural that being called HP, they are given by creatures that come from HP Lovecraft universe, I guess. But anyway, the souls give not HP, but give power, and if used in particular way, can give you more physical power or intelligence, or HP themselves, as you can increase your life bar. So they give clarity, they give strength, they give power, and they give HP. Then we have the Tearstone that the Avestone that of which we already speak about. Then there are the things that can give you life, which are solidified souls from Dark Souls 2. So here we see that a soul cannot give you life, but a solidified stone with a soul with a more density can give you HP differently from normal souls. Then consequently, we find that even the actually maybe the probably the bigger soul stone should be over the Estus flask has HP recovery. But let's there are several levels of crystallization of souls. Anyway, we find the Estus flask, which according to the description of the soul of the Firekeeper, more dense flame it has, the more HP it gives. Then it must be just a consequence, a natural consequence, that the Dark Souls is a concentration of souls more dense than the Estus flask and the stones of souls. Then we have stones that give you invincibility and that may be even more powerful than the Dark Souls, as they are solidified Dark Souls, or solidified soul to a level of crystallization, which are the Dragon Scales, which are not sure rightly represented by this image, and the Crystal of Sith, which give invincibility, and that likely give lives at the same speed and the same way in which a constant Dark Souls would do to a human. Conclusion of this second part is that souls have several states that can be air, fire, blood, stone, can materialize in player abilities, improving brain, muscles, etc. Souls. The second point is that souls tend naturally to get concentrated in clusters. A major density means more power and more life force, HP, human form. Third, we can associate the Old One with the Egyptian god Atum, which created the whole world from his own Ka. This is still something we speak in the first season, and is what I believe to be the basic idea of the three franchise. Indeed, that everything has been created by the soul of the Old One at different level of solidification. Maybe the world, maybe the plants and the rocks and everything that is on the planet is a solidification of the soul of a complete Old One, which has all the existent souls, and who is able to create from a primordial chaos everything that exists. As it happened from the Egyptian culture, Egyptian religion, which is one of the main source of inspiration for H.P. Lovecraft, and consequently is one of the major inspiration for Miyazaki. This is basically a fact, even if it is one of the most difficult things to prove without a deep research. But I will speak about this in my previous video, so if you like, you may go to check what I said there. So I thank you for your incredible patience to arrive till here. I don't know how many people are at the end of this video, but I guess if someone is here, it means that he found some interesting points on this theory, and I hope this can be an interesting work for many people that follow Dark Souls. So thank you for your attention, and I will see you when I will find again time to do videos about Dark Souls, and hope that you will consider to share this video with other people. Thank you. Bye bye.